China's forbidden lab discovered by U.S. soldiers. Command told us it was a weather station, nothing more. But the second our boots hit the ice, the doors opened on their own. Cameras tracked us before we touched the keypad. The radios hissed our names in voices that weren't ours. And deep inside, the walls didn't echo back our footsteps. They echoed something walking with us. We were redirected mid-flight. No briefing, no patch, no insignia. Not even a call sign, just a folded piece of paper slid under the headset with a set of coordinates scribbled in thick black ink. No explanation, no warning. The kind of order you don't question because the silence around it is louder than anything you could say. The pilot never once looked back at us. Not when we loaded in, not when the engines screamed us into the sky, not even when one of the guys tried to ask what airfield we were heading to. He just kept staring forward, jaw clenched, white-knuckled on the stick like he was flying straight into his own grave. Every mile we flew, the cabin felt colder, tighter, the radio stayed dead silent. No chatter, no check-ins, just the sound of the rotors beating down the mountain air. When we finally saw it, it didn't look like anything military, not like anything at all. A landing zone carved out of nothing but white ice and black stone, the pad freshly painted in perfect white circles that hadn't even been scuffed by boots yet. The paint fumes clawed through the freezing wind. It was new, too new. Behind the pad, built into the mountain, was a concrete slab of a building, half swallowed by rock and ice, like the earth itself had tried to bury it. No insignia, no flags, no markings to tell you who it belonged to. Just smooth gray walls, vents exhaling faint clouds of warm vapor, and one massive blast door tall enough to swallow a tank hole. But the strangest part was above the door. A thick, ugly strip of steel had been welded across what used to be an emblem. The welds were jagged, sloppy, still blackened with soot. Whatever symbol had been there, someone had wanted it erased. Not hidden, not repainted, erased. Sergeant Hale's voice cut through the headset, flat, cold, body cams on. Weapons hot. Nobody looks up. You see something above eye level. You don't acknowledge it. Nobody asked what he meant. We just clipped in, slid down the ropes, and hit the pad in silence. The ice crunched under our boots, the kind of sound that echoes for miles in the still air. Every breath burned like glass in my chest. My cam light blinked green, and for a moment I caught my reflection in the steel door. Only it wasn't just my reflection. It blinked half a second late. We stacked up on the entrance. Hale raised a fist, signaling us to hold. His other hand hovered over the keypad, bolted to the wall. Before he could punch in a code, the keypad chirped. The red light above it flashed once, then turned green. The bolts screamed open, one by one, echoing through the mountain like the groan of something waking up. None of us touched it. None of us even breathed. But the door began to move, grinding against the ice, opening for us on its own. Private Ramirez whispered, voice shaking. "Sir, they already knew we were coming." Inside the dark seam of that doorway, I swear I heard it, breathing, slow, heavy, and not ours. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't a mission. It was an invitation. The airlock swallowed us one by one. As the steel door behind us clanged shut, the mountain's wind cut off instantly. No echo, no sound, just the suffocating hum of hidden machinery. The temperature shifted too fast. My skin prickled, fogging the visor of my mask. It was warmer in here, almost too warm, like stepping into the lungs of something alive. The entry corridor stretched ahead, sterile white walls that gleamed under harsh strip lights. No dust, no scratches, no footprints. It looked like no one had ever set foot here, yet the place was awake, pulsing with an invisible rhythm, like the building itself was breathing around us. Hale raised his fist to halt. We all froze, rifles half raised. The keypad next to the inner door flickered. None of us touched it. None of us even moved. But the panel lit green, beeped softly, and the lock disengaged on its own. Private Ramirez whispered under his breath, "Sir, who opened it?" The door slid apart with a low hydraulic sigh, revealing another passage deeper inside. The walls here were lined with black mirrored panels, broken up by strips of cameras angled down toward us. Their servos whirred faintly, lenses adjusting, watching us. I tried to keep my eyes front, but curiosity got the better of me. I glanced sideways into the mirrored surface. And that seps when I froze. The reflection wasn't matching me. It was late. My mirrored self blinked a second after I did. It moved like it knew what I was about to do, not what I had just done. Eyes front, Hale snapped. His voice echoed too long, as if the corridor stretched farther than it should. We moved, boots striking in perfect rhythm. Yet above us, the cameras rotated, following, tracking. Their lenses weren't fixed on our faces. They were pulsing with a faint red glow in sync with something else. My pulse, each time my heart thudded, the light blinked. I slowed my breathing, trying to test it, and the glow dimmed. Ramirez was trembling. I could hear it in his gear rattling. He lifted his weapon slightly toward the mirror wall. I grabbed his barrel and forced it down. "Don't," I mouthed. The panel shifted. For a heartbeat, it didn't show us at all. It showed the corridor empty, except for a shadow crossing the floor, a shadow with no source. Hale pushed forward, jaw clenched. "Keep moving. Ignore it. Nothing follows us unless we let it." The corridor seemed endless. Each section we passed clicked shut behind us, sealing us deeper, one layer at a time, until I couldn't tell if we were being secured in or locked away from escape. At the far end, another door waited. Its keypad lit green before Hale even reached for it. A hiss of static crackled from a hidden speaker above. And then, a voice. Flat, distorted. Reciting each of our names, one by one, perfectly pronounced. We froze. The voice paused, then said the last word in a tone that made my blood run cold. "Welcome back." The door slid open with a hiss that felt too eager, like it was relieved to let us in. Beyond stretched a corridor longer than it had any right to be, a straight vein of polished steel and mirrored glass panels running along both sides. Strip lights buzzed overhead, flickering just enough to make the shadows twitch across the floor. The first thing I noticed were the cameras, mounted every 10 feet, small dome lenses, turning in unison. Their servos whined softly but not randomly. They moved like they were scanning in rhythm, almost like breathing. Every step we took, the lenses followed, tilting down and tracking us with mechanical precision. I told myself it was standard surveillance tech, motion sensors tied to optics. But then I realized something that made my stomach drop. They weren't tracking movement. They were tracking me. Each time my heart pounded in my ears, the nearest lens blinked red. I slowed my breathing on purpose, counted the beats in my chest, and the glow dimmed. When I inhaled fast, it pulsed faster. The cameras weren't watching our bodies. They were listening to our hearts. Hale barked, eyes forward. "Don't interact." His tone was clipped, harsh, but beneath it I heard something else. Fear. I tried. God, I tried. But as we advanced, the mirrored wall to my right seemed to pull at my vision, begging me to look. Finally, I gave in. That sips when I understood why Hale warned us. My reflection was wrong. Not just a little wrong. Delayed, half a second behind. I blinked, it blinked late. I moved my rifle up. The mirrored soldier lagged. At first, I thought it was some trick of light, but then it did something I didn't. It tilted its head and smiled. My throat went dry. I looked away instantly, but the image burned behind my eyelids. I wasn't smiling. None of us were, but the thing in the mirror had looked like it knew me. Ramirez muttered, "Did you see that?" His voice cracked. He'd looked too. Before I could answer, the mirrored panels ahead shifted, like a glitch in a video feed. They no longer showed us at all. Instead, they displayed the same hallway but empty. We froze. The sound of our boots on the steel floor echoed, but the glass showed nothing. An empty hall, no soldiers, no squad, just a hollow corridor stretching on forever. Then movement. A shadow passed across the glass. Not ours. It was tall, thin, its proportions all wrong. It had no source, no body to cast it, yet it glided smoothly across the reflection and disappeared into the corner where the lights flickered hardest. The mirrored panels crackled again. This time they didn't show emptiness, they showed us. But not the us that was standing there. The reflections had their rifles raised, aimed square at our chests. Ramirez lifted his weapon instinctively, shaking. Hale shoved the barrel down. "Don't, they want you to keep moving." My mouth went dry. The mirrored versions of us didn't move after that, they just stayed frozen, guns aimed, grinning the way soldiers don't grin in situations like this. As we advanced farther, the mirrored panels began to show time out of sync, a flicker of tomorrow, a flicker of yesterday. Sometimes the corridors stretched longer, sometimes shorter. Sometimes I saw us already at the next door before we even took a step. Every time I blinked, I wasn't sure if I was seeing my reflection or my replacement. By the time we reached the far end, my hands were trembling so hard I could barely hold my rifle steady. The last mirrored panel caught me at the corner of my vision. I forced myself not to look, but I swear I saw it lean closer to the glass, as if whispering something I wasn't meant to hear. The final door lit green. Another voice crackled overhead through hidden speakers. Not distorted this time, not robotic. It was my voice, repeating my name. And then, after a pause, it laughed. The final door slid open with a metallic groan, and for the first time since we'd landed, I wanted to turn back. The room beyond wasn't another sterile corridor. It looked like a theater. Rows of seats descended in tiers toward a wide glass window that stretched wall to wall. Beyond that glass, darkness, a chamber on the other side too deep to see, as if the light itself had been swallowed. But the real horror sat in the center of the room, an old projector, massive, bolted to the floor. Its reels spun silently, film threading through, casting grainy images onto a cracked white screen at the front. We entered slowly, our boots thumping against the floor. Dust floated in the projector's beam, swirling like tiny ghosts. The seats were empty, but not untouched. A jacket draped over one, a notebook lying open on another, its pen still balanced across the crease. Someone had been here, recently. Ramirez reached for the notebook. Hale snapped, "Don't touch," but Ramirez froze mid-motion. Not because of Hale's order, but because of what was on the screen. The film wasn't showing some old experiment. It was showing us, our squad, helmets on, rifles ready, moving into this very theater. I felt my stomach tighten. We were watching ourselves walk into a room we were already standing in. The timestamp burned into the bottom corner of the film was wrong. Not today, not yesterday, it was tomorrow. For a long moment, none of us spoke. The only sound was the whir of the reels and the faint hum of the glass wall. Then Ramirez whispered, "This isn't set live, it can set be." But the film kept rolling. It showed Hale stepping forward, waving his hand. A moment later, Hale did exactly that, perfect sync. My throat closed when I realized what was coming next. The film was always one step ahead. I saw myself glance at the projector. Then, as if obeying, I glanced at it. It was controlling us, or predicting us. I couldn't tell which. Hale slammed the butt of his rifle against a chair. "Enough, it's a trick." But his voice didn't shake the room like it should have. The sound echoed oddly, as if the air wasn't carrying it, as if it was being recorded. Then the film froze. A single still frame filled the screen, the bunker's blast door, the outside world. Only in the image, the door wasn't shut, it was wide open. And standing in the opening wasn't us, it was something else. A figure too tall, too thin, leaning against the wind as if waiting to enter. The projector's reel stopped spinning, but the screen didn't go black. The frame stayed lit. The image burned in place. Then letters began to flicker across the bottom, scratched onto the film itself like subtitles. Operational continuity. If Western team arrives, proceed to phase echo. Hale swore under his breath. This was staged. They knew we'd come, but the screen wasn't done. It cut to black for a heartbeat. Then a new still image appeared. This very room, empty, seats unoccupied, projector silent. Only the timestamp said 3 days from now. and across the glass wall behind the seats, faint shapes began to move. Pale hands pressed against the glass, dragging downward as if trying to claw their way inside. The speakers above us hissed, spitting static, until a voice bled through. Not foreign, not machine. It was my voice. Soft, calm, whispering words I couldn't remember ever saying. You were never supposed to see this. The glass wall vibrated with a low groan, like something in the darkness beyond was shifting, pressing closer. That was when Ramirez dropped the notebook. The pen rolled across the floor, clattering too loud in the silence. On instinct, every head turned toward the noise. The projector seized that moment. The screen flickered again, this time showing us right now looking down at the fallen pen. Only in the projection, one of us wasn't moving. One of us was missing. And it wasn't Seth Ramirez. It wasn't Seth Hallel. It was me. The glass wall groaned behind us as we left the theater. None of us looked back. Hale shoved the door closed, but even after it sealed, I swore I could feel that projector beam crawling across my neck like a spotlight. The new corridor we stepped into was nothing like the clean white halls before. It bled red, emergency lights throbbed in pulses, washing everything in a dark crimson glow. Each flash painted our helmets, our weapons, our faces in strokes of blood. It felt like we were marching through a heartbeat. The floor was slick. At first I thought it was water, but when my boot came down, it didn't splash. It smeared. A faint, oily film coated the steel, making every step drag with a sickening squeak. Overhead, sirens wailed. Not sharp alarms, these were slow, rhythmic inhaling and exhaling, like the walls themselves were breathing. With each inhale, the corridor lights brightened. With each exhale, they dimmed almost to black. Hale motioned forward, keep it tight, eyes front. His voice sounded too loud in this space. Arrows on the walls blinked in the same rhythm as the lights. They pointed right, then flickered left, then right again. Every few steps they changed, as if the building wanted us lost, circling, confused. We stopped at one junction. Two hallways stretched away, identical, both glowing red, both lined with black panels that trembled faintly like stretched skin. Hale unfolded a pocket map the size of his palm. I caught a glimpse of it before he snapped it shut. The lines were moving, redrawing, like the walls were reconfiguring around us in real time. Map's no good, Hale muttered. He set his jaw. We make our own way. He raised his rifle and slammed the butt against the nearest panel. The metal caved in with a crunch that didn't sound like metal at all. It sounded wet. The broken plate swung open, cables spilling out like veins. Behind them was not wiring, not insulation. It was glass. And behind that glass, an eye? Not human, not animal. Too large, too dark, with a vertical slit that widened when our lights hit it. The thing blinked. Slowly, and frost spidered outward across the glass, racing toward our boots. Ramirez stumbled back, his breath quickening. The sirens immediately matched his panic, pulsing faster, louder. The corridor seemed to sync itself with him, feeding on his fear. Control your breathing, Hale barked, shoving Ramirez against the wall. They're listening. I realized what he meant a second later. My own chest was heaving, and with every beat of my heart, the lights strobed harder, brighter. When I held my breath, the siren dimmed. The corridor wasn't just tracking us, it was alive, syncing with us. Then, without warning, the floor beneath us vibrated, something massive shifted below. Pipes rattled, the oily film rippled like liquid under our boots. From far down the corridor, a deep metallic groan echoed, like a door turning underwater. We weren't alone in this place, and whatever was here, it had just woken up. The arrows on the wall flickered again, not right, not left. This time they pointed straight down the hall where the red glow was brightest. The breathing siren hushed for one long moment. Silence thickened, pressing into our ears. Then, faintly in that silence, I heard it tapping, slow, deliberate, from the end of the hall. 1, 2, 3, then it tapped my name. And the red corridor answered with a sound I shall never forget. A laugh. Low, mechanical, echoing from nowhere and everywhere at once. The red corridor finally broke into a chamber that sucked the air out of my lungs. The moment we stepped through, the temperature dropped like we had walked into another world. Our breath fogged instantly, hanging in clouds that froze and fell like ash. My visor glass frosted at the edges. This was the cold room. It stretched wider than the theater, with ceilings lost in shadow and rows upon rows of metallic cases stacked high like coffins, stretching back into darkness. Frost coated everything. The racks creaked as if the weight of whatever they held was too much for the steel to bear. Our boots crunched on ice that hadn't fully frozen, thin sheets that cracked and shifted with each step. The sound echoed, multiplied, and returned to us from strange directions, like we weren't the only ones moving. Hail signaled a spread formation. We advanced slowly, rifles up. The cases closest to me were stamped with symbols I didn't recognize. Not numbers, not letters, but branching shapes like diagrams of nerves or roots, etched into the metal as if burned there. Some were crossed out, others freshly scratched in, deep grooves gouged into the frost. Ramirez stopped at one of the cases. His glove brushed against it. A sound hissed through the air like a sigh. The case exhaled, a cloud of vapor, curling out from the seam. We all swung rifles toward it, but nothing moved. Just the hiss of cold air and the faint drip of water. But then I noticed something worse. Every case was sealed tight, except one. On the far side of the room, a crate the size of a man lay open. Its lid leaned against the rack, ice frozen over the hinges, and a slick puddle of half-melted frost bled out across the floor. The puddle didn't spread outward. It ran backward, like gravity was reversed, climbing back into the crate in slow, steady rivulets. Hale motioned us forward, jaw clenched. We approached. The inside of the case wasn't empty. It was wet, smeared, as if something had thrashed against the walls before escaping. The padding was torn, shredded by claws or nails. Carved into the inner panel were words not Chinese, not English, but scratched deep enough to reveal the bare steel beneath. Whatever language it was, one word stood out clearly, repeated over and over in jagged English letters. Today, I stepped back, bile rising in my throat, my breath fogged thick. But then I noticed something else on the wall just above the open crate, a height mark, like the kind parents make for their children. A short line etched with a coin or knife. Above it, scratched letters spelled out 5 years. Below it, 8 years. And just under the lowest one, fresh, carved so deep the steel warped today. The hair on my neck bristled. Then the lights flickered. Every case in the room shuddered, metal groaning, frost cracked, lids rattling against bolts. The sound grew, louder and louder, until it felt like the whole chamber was shaking with pressure. Ramirez panicked, rifle snapping up. Something's in here. No, Hale barked. Hold your fire. But before he could say more, the freezer door slammed shut behind us with a thunderous clang. We spun around, rifles aimed, but it was sealed tight. No keypad, no handle, nothing. Just a smooth slab of steel slick with frost. A second later, something pressed against the circular glass window on the door. A pale hand, small, child-sized. Fingers splayed, nails cracked and bleeding. But it wasn't on the other side, it was on our side. We snapped our rifles toward it. Nothing was there. The frost swirled across the glass, the imprint fading as if it had never been. The cases hissed again, one by one, like a chorus of exhaling lungs. Vapor filled the chamber, crawling low across the floor, thick and cold, until we could only see each other from the waist up. Shapes shifted in the fog. Shadows, moving, circling. My radio clicked, static hissing. Then a voice, soft, almost a whisper, broke through. It was my own voice. And it said, "Don said, let them breathe with you." I froze. The fog around my knees thickened, coiling, and I realized the shapes weren't circling. They were closing in. The cold room's fog followed us as we forced our way into the next section. When the freezer door finally hissed open, it was almost a relief to stumble through until we realized what lay ahead. The passage curved downward, a spiral lined with rusted steel plates and pipes that groaned like a ship's hull under pressure. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling, freezing into long, jagged icicles that rattled each time we passed. The air stank of copper and ozone, sharp and unnatural. At the bottom, the stairwell opened into a wide, circular chamber. It felt like a hub, the heart of the facility. The walls curved inward, lined with consoles and terminals arranged in perfect symmetry. Dust coated some of them, but not all. A few hummed faintly, lights blinking in deliberate rhythms. In the center of the chamber was a single chair bolted to the floor, facing a blank metal wall. Restraints dangled from its arms, still buckled as if someone had been cut out instead of released. The leather straps were stiff with age, cracked, but damp as if they had been used recently. Hale motioned for us to spread out, rifles sweeping, check everything, fast. I moved to one of the consoles. The screen was black, dead. But when I turned away, light flickered in the corner of my vision. I looked back. It was awake, glowing pale green. I hadn't touched it. The screen showed a video feed. At first, static, but then an image sharpened. My blood ran cold. It was the helicopter. Our helicopter, sitting on the landing pad above the mountain, and stepping out of it was us. I stared, heart hammering, as the feed played in real time. 6 soldiers dismounting, rifles ready. One of them lifted his head just enough for me to see his face. My own face. I felt my knees weaken. Hale, you need to see this. The others gathered around. We watched ourselves on the monitor, moving in perfect sync with what we had already done hours ago. The same descent, the same approach. But something was wrong. Their formation wasn't exactly ours. Their timing was slightly off. They moved a fraction too slow, like they were fighting against invisible resistance. Ramirez whispered, voice shaking. That's not us. That's another team. The intercom above crackled to life. A voice slithering out through static. It wasn't Chinese. It wasn't distorted. It was familiar, too familiar. It was my own voice, reversed, speaking our call signs backward like a tape rewinding. I staggered back from the console. The screen flickered again, switching feeds. Now it showed the circular chamber we were standing in, but the timestamp in the corner was not today's. It was 3 hours ahead. And in that feed, the room wasn't set empty. We were still there, same gear, same formation, but half of us were gone. The chair in the center was occupied, something tall, gaunt, strapped into it, head bowed, twitching against the restraints. The other versions of us were standing around it, weapons lowered as if waiting. The live console at my side crackled, words scrolled across the bottom of the screen, auto-typed in jagged letters. Pacey Echo, initiate contact. The wall in front of the chair began to change. At first it looked like condensation, water spreading across metal, but then the surface rippled, like a pond disturbed by a single stone. Light shimmered across it, bending, refracting. We approached slowly, rifles up. The ripple deepened into an image, a tunnel flooded with black water stretching endlessly into darkness. At the end was another door, rusted, chained, trembling with pressure behind it. I realized with a sick jolt that it wasn't a recording. It was a live feed. The wall itself was a window, no, a membrane, into somewhere else. Ramirez muttered, "That's not a lab. That's a portal." The intercom hissed. This time the voice was clearer. My voice, speaking in perfect cadence. "Do not open the water door. We didn't survive that version." I froze. The message wasn't for all of us. It was aimed straight at me. The rippling wall pulsed, a slow heartbeat radiating outward. The chair restraints snapped taut, as if waiting. And for a moment, I felt the impossible, like something beyond the glass membrane was staring directly back at me. Not at the squad, not at the room, at me. The screens on every console blinked red in unison. Across them, a single word repeated, flashing over and over until it branded itself in my vision. Echo. Echo. Hale's voice broke through the suffocating silence. We move now, but the wall rippled again, this time not with water, with faces. Ours pressed against the membrane from the other side, mouths opening in screams we couldn't hear. The order to move came too late. By the time Hale barked it, the chamber itself seemed to know what we intended. The only exit doors slammed shut in unison, echoing like gunshots. The sound rattled the racks of consoles, dust spilling from vents above. The only path left was the one staring us in the face. The rippling wall, the image of that drowned tunnel, the chained floodgate waiting at the end of it. Hale's jaw clenched. He checked his rifle, though we all knew bullets meant nothing against whatever this was. We stick together. No heroics, no wandering. We go in, we get out. The ripple deepened, and before anyone could argue, the membrane pulled us forward with a suction so sudden it knocked the breath from my lungs. One moment I was in the hub chamber. The next, ice water swallowed me whole. The shock was brutal. My limbs seized, lungs burning instantly, the freezing current dragging us down the flooded passage. Our headlamps flickered weakly, their beams dissolving in the black water. Shapes darted in the periphery, pale and fast. But when I whipped my head, they vanished. We clawed our way along rusted rungs, bolted into the walls of the tunnel until finally our boots found footing. We rose, gasping in a chamber half-submerged, water lapping at our waists. The stink of rust and rot was suffocating. And there it was, the flood door. It loomed ahead, bigger than I'd imagined. Thick steel, chained across with lengths so corroded they looked brittle, but still holding. The wheel lock trembled as if something behind it was pounding, not with fists, but with tidal surges of pressure. We stood frozen, watching mist curl up from the seams, listening to the groan of ancient hinges straining. Ramirez whispered, voice quaking. Whatever's back there, it's alive. No, Hale said grimly. It sits awake. He turned to us, and for a second I thought he'd give the order to retreat. But the intercom crackled to life again, though there were no speakers here. The voice came from inside our radios, hissing through static. It was my voice. Again. Do not open the water door. We didn't survive that version. The warning from myself. From another me. But the wheel began to turn, slowly, metal shrieking, vibrating under unseen force. We hadn't touched it. The chains rattled violently, straining, links snapping one by one. Hale lunged forward, jamming the butt of his rifle into the spokes of the wheel, trying to jam it. Sparks flew as steel ground against steel. He shouted, "Help me hold it." We pressed in, 3 sets of hands straining against a wheel that spun on its own, like something massive on the other side was pulling. The water surged higher around our legs, frothing, warm now, foul-smelling. My chest ached with pressure I couldn't explain, like the thing behind the door was pressing against my ribs. One last chain snapped. The sound echoed like a gunshot. The wheel jerked free, flinging us back into the rising water. The door inhaled, not opened, inhaled. A rush of air so powerful it pulled the fog, the water, even our screams forward. For a fraction of a second, I saw into the gap. Not a room, not a chamber. A black expanse, deeper than ocean trenches, filled with shifting silhouettes too large to comprehend. Pale, human-shaped faces floated like lanterns, mouths open in endless, soundless wails. Their eyes tracked us, countless, glowing faintly in the dark. Then something looked back. One massive, lidless eye opened in the void, its gaze slamming into my skull like a hammer. My vision whitened. My thoughts scrambled. My body felt small, microscopic. Ramirez screamed. Or maybe I did. Hale fired his rifle into the gap, useless rounds swallowed by water and shadow. The recoil was the last human sound before the entire chamber roared, the surge pulling us closer, closer. And then, silence. I woke on the snow, face down, choking ice crystals, lungs searing. The helicopter rotor thundered overhead. The pad looked the same, too clean, too new. My squad lay sprawled around me, silent. I staggered to my feet. The pilot didn't turn, he just raised a hand toward the cabin, waiting for us to board. Ramirez coughed hard, sat up, eyes wide and blank. Hale stood slowly, rifle hanging limp at his side. None of us spoke, we just climbed in. The doors slammed shut. As the helicopter lifted, I dared a glance back. The blast door was sealed again. The welded strip of steel glinted in the sun. For a heartbeat, I thought maybe it had all been in my head. But then I saw the reflection in the glass of the cabin window. We were all there, but not us. Faces pale, eyes too wide, moving half a second behind our own. I blinked, heart hammering. The reflection smiled. And over the comms, my own voice whispered, "Welcome back. If you think this was just another mission report, you're wrong." What we saw inside that lab didn't stay sealed behind steel and chains. It followed us. In our reflections, in our voices, in the silence between heartbeats. And the worst part, command still denies this place exists. But when the door opens again and someone else will walk in thinking it's just another mission. And by then, it won't be waiting. It will be ready.